Salt Lake City, September 30th. Vice President Agnew.
Well, first of all, let me say that I didn't read Senator Goodell out of the party. He read himself out of the party by his conduct and his actions in the past year, maybe a little longer than that. You see, Senator Goodell has made a political career out of criticizing the president and other high Republican office holders, and he's made that career for the purpose of identifying himself with the elements that are most critical of the Republican Party. Now, he's a radical liberal. There isn't any doubt of that. I think he has an ADA rating of about 85% at the present time, higher than any other Republican in the Senate. He's in a class by himself, is what I'm saying to you.
The White House, October 20th. Ronald Ziegler, the president's press secretary.
The Republican nominee has not supported the president, for example, on the course of action he has pursued in South Vietnam. The senator has not supported the president on matters relating to the Supreme Court, matters relating to the ABM, and because of these circumstances will not follow his normal practice of endorsing the Republican nominee in the New York Senate race.
Senator Goodell addresses the voters of New York.
Good evening. It's a very agonizing moment for me. There have been many anguishing moments for me in recent days and weeks. I've tried to listen to the voices of our land. I've heard the voice of a young man who said to me 3 weeks ago, in the early 1950s, the bad word was communists. Now it's students. 2 days ago in Kennedy Airport, a fatigued waitress came up to me and said, "Good luck, Senator Goodell. My son died in Vietnam a year ago, August." And then we have the voice of a young Puerto Rican boy who said to me a few weeks ago, "Have the people forgotten about me?" And then, of course, we have the voice of the sincere hard hats who bewail at the students. We have the voice of the hard-working American citizens who earn a living, can buy less with it, and they're frustrated. We also have the voice of the Vice President of the United States that you heard at the beginning of this program. I believe very deeply in my country. I anguish today because I am concerned about what my duty is to my country, how I can best serve my country. If I think that I could diminish the hatred, the congealed hostility in our society by losing, I would be glad to lose. But I have to face now 3 events that have occurred in the last 4 weeks. First of all, my political blood has been spilled by the flaming sword of retribution wielded by the Vice President. And then, what you might call the hard-hatted political militants in the White House decreed my political demise. And now, the New York Daily News has declared that the polls indicate that I will lose, that I am behind. This in the face of every other poll that I've seen that indicates in the last 3 weeks I've been gaining. But I am the only one of the United States senators, Senate candidates, who have been picking up the undecided votes. But the momentum has been with me. And yet that New York Daily News poll is important. There are many Americans, there are many New Yorkers who look at it, and even though it's been wrong for the last 3 elections, 2 out of the last 3, including predicting that Governor Rockefeller would lose in 1966, being way off on John Lindsay's election last fall, it is important. Because there is fear abroad. There is insecurity. And there are those who now counsel me that I should withdraw and throw my support to someone else. I'm speaking to you tonight without any notes, as though we were talking in the living room, because I think it's important you understand how I think about this issue and how I arrive at the decisions that I make. This country is in trouble. As a United States Senator for 2 years, I made up my mind that I was going to speak out on the issues, that the old political games were not enough for us. I had been a Republican all my life. Started in the Eisenhower administration, then to a town board, Republican county chairman, and Congress. Whatever happens in this election, I'm not going to let anybody define me out of the Republican Party, because I believe that we need independence in the Republican Party. We need a positive approach. We need to reach out to people and help them. And I know that my two opponents in this campaign are both sincere men, and I respect them. I differ with them, each in a different way. I know that Mr. Ottinger has been in the House of Representatives for 6 years. And I know that in that 6-year period, he has not produced very much legislation. He has given leadership in the area of environment with one bill, the Hudson River Compact. He's a sincere man. And Mr. Buckley is talking in terms that appeal to the people today. He understands your insecurities and your fears. He understands that you want to have safety in the streets and safety at home. So do we all. But Mr. Buckley goes on to talk about a program which is really no program at all. He wants to go to Washington in the United States Senate and talk about your problems. He's going to vote against the federal government helping you with your problems. A little while ago, I went out to Suffolk, where they were having hearings on sewage disposal plants. They can't raise the money locally. The real property taxes are so high, people are losing their homes. What do we do about the retired, whose incomes don't go up? And their real property taxes keep rising, and the sales taxes that hit the poor and the middle income keep going up too. Mr. Buckley says, I will go to Washington and talk about your problems, but you raise the money locally. He has made it clear that he would vote against President Nixon's welfare reform measure. The president has indicated his top priority in domestic legislation. He'd vote against housing, against new health measures, against mass transit. All of these are part of the president's program. All of these are things that I have voted for, I've worked for. I put through amendments to increase the money, to improve the laws, and make them more realistic. And I know that the people of our country are frustrated. You know, about 6 months ago, to be exact, on February 9th of this year, the chairman of the New York Stock Exchange came to my office as an emissary of the vice president, proposing that perhaps I could accommodate my convictions in some ways. And I said that I didn't feel that was my role as a senator. That was 5 days after I had come out as the first Republican senator in opposition to Judge Carswell. People say that in opposing Judge Carswell and Judge Hainsworth, I have not been a Republican. What does the Republican Party stand for if it doesn't stand for civil liberties and civil rights for all our people? Judge Carswell, just 7 years ago on the federal bench, ruled that the plaintiffs didn't even state a cause of action when they alleged that blacks had to sit in the balcony in Tallahassee, Florida theaters. That's not my idea of Republican. And so I led the fight against Judge Carswell. And ultimately, the Republicans of Florida even rejected it. When the White House spoke recently against me, they cited 4 issues. 1, the war. 2nd, ABM. And the 3rd and 4th were the 2 Supreme Court nominations. These are the things they said stacked up most against me. Well, I'm very proud that a year ago I was the first senator, the first congressman to stand up and propose that we end this war, that Congress share this burden, that we not blame the president and stand and wring our hands and tell him to get out of Vietnam, but that we set a fixed date for unilateral withdrawal from Vietnam and end this awful bloodshed. The longest war in our history. It's a wrong war. And I, as a senator, have to stand up and give some leadership on this issue. I'm very proud also that that amendment to end the war, providing for unilateral withdrawal, had the support of 40 senators in August of 1970. And I'm proud that the President has moved measurably toward the position of the advocates of the amendment to end the war. In his recent speech, for the first time, he used the words, complete withdrawal on a fixed timetable. And it was a conciliatory speech. And hopefully, there is more of substance that he has offered privately behind the scenes in the Paris negotiations. And I'm very proud that I have been one of the leaders fighting against military expenditures that are wasteful and excessive. How can we justify the fact that out of every $100 that you pay in federal income taxes, $48.37 goes to the military? If it's necessary, it can be justified. But we all know how much has been wasted in the military. We all know that until last year, when some of us stood up on the Senate floor and challenged the Pentagon, everything they asked for, the Armed Services Committee tended to approve. And it went through. And it resulted in billions of dollars, your tax dollars, being wasted. So these are the issues that face this country. I think a United States Senator has to provide leadership. That means that he has to speak up on unpopular issues at times. He has to fight the tide, when the tide, in his opinion, is running wrong. When the frustrations of our people accumulate to lead them to simplistic solutions that will not solve. That's what I've tried to do. I have spoken out. I have gone across this country speaking out for those who didn't have very much voice. And I've gotten a lot of enemies in the process. I haven't felt it was my role as a United States Senator to take orders from anyone. I did challenge my president on Vietnam, not blaming him for that war. It's not his war. But trying to carry my share of the responsibility in getting out of that war. And I did go out and talk to the students, 55 universities in this country in the last 2 years. I told off the militant radicals, the bomb throwers and the rock throwers, and they jeered and booed. The overwhelming number of the students believe in this. They were with me. I think a senator has to go out there in the front lines, establish the lines of communication, tell them that it's wrong to commit violence, tell them there are people in public life who can help them improve our country and make our system more responsive to the needs of all our people. I've also gone before the very militant hard hats who have been very much maligned by a few. And I've told them violence is wrong, that they should work within the system, and they should understand a little bit why some of us feel so deeply that this war is wrong. And they should listen to the students who don't have all the answers. They shouldn't certainly categorize them all among the militants and the radicals. This is the most beautiful younger generation in the history of our country. They're committed and concerned, overwhelmingly. They want to be a part of this system. They want to change it, to make it better. And we should be encouraging. And I find myself resenting the fact that many people in public life today are running against the future generation of Americans. They go out and say, wave the flag. You know, I fought in World War II and the Korean War. I love that flag. I like to see it waving. I don't like to see it waving to cover up our sins, so we don't talk about them. I don't like to see it waving to divide us rather than unite us. That flag belongs to all of us, every one of us. And it doesn't do much good for Mr. Agnew or Mr. Buckley or anyone else to tell a housewife in Brooklyn or Buffalo who's been mugged last night to go home and wave that flag. Our country is strong. It is strong, with all its weaknesses that we can correct. We should wave the flag. We should do more. We have to have positive programs. We have to have realistic solutions. This is not a time for us to divide with alliterative rhetoric. This is a time for us to look to our problems compassionately and dispassionately, to try to solve them with reason and realism. And I know we're never going to solve them unless our public officials speak out on their convictions, unless our public officials are willing to bear the slings and arrows. They're willing to see the hate mail that comes in larger and larger numbers every week, and they stand up to the tide of rhetoric. It's a rarefied form of rhetoric that we have been hearing. Now, ladies and gentlemen of New York State, I have chosen this moment to address you because I think it is incumbent upon me to face conscientiously, as I have tried to face every issue in the last 2 years, the decision the people of New York State face in 1 week from Tuesday. And I say to you that I have had lots of counsel, and I have anguished over this. But I believe very deeply that it would be wrong for me to obeisantly yield to the forces of the right and to let them have their victory in absentia. What they want most of all is to destroy me. What they want most of all, whoever is elected here, is to see to it that I am not elected. I am going to do everything I can, whatever capacity I have, whatever role which fate casts me, to fight those forces, to bring back sanity in our country. And I don't think it's a partisan issue at all. I don't think it's a question of being anti-Republican. My roots are Republican. I believe very deeply in the potential of the Republican Party. I believe very deeply that the President needs progressives in the United States Senate and the United States House of Representatives coming up with ideas. Progressives like Chuck Percy and Jack Javits and Ed Brooke and a great many others. And I've been proud to number myself among them. And so, I will stand. You know, one of my favorite quotations is from a great classical scholar with reference to the civilization of the Greeks and the Romans. And he put it this way: in the end, more than they wanted freedom, they wanted security, a comfortable life. And they lost all security and comfort and freedom. When the Athenians finally wanted, not for society to give to them, but what they could do for society, when Athens ceased to be free, it was never free again. Ladies and gentlemen, freedom has died many ways throughout history. It has died gloriously on the battlefield. It has died cravenly in the halls of politics. It has died selfishly in ambition and avarice of men. But the most ignominious death of all is when freedom dies in its sleep. And I guess you would sum up that that is the method and manner of my approach in the last 2 years. I have tried to provide leadership to awaken our people to the desperate dangers that beset us. I have stood for election in the United States Senate And I shall continue to stand for election in the United States Senate. I believe in my country, and I think I can win this election with your support. If you'll all vote for me who want me in the United States Senate and put aside party lines, I know I will be returned there. Thank you.
Well, Charlie, we've heard you. Senator Percy of Illinois and I have been sitting here and listening as you did speak, as we know, extemporaneously, and we didn't know, and you didn't know when you'd actually be through and how much time would be left. It's a most moving feeling that I had sitting here listening to you, because it echoed everything that I felt in over 2 decades in public life, everything that I believe the governor feels in backing you as he did, in appointing you and backing you in the nomination and backing you now, and everything our Attorney General Lefkowitz feels, and so many senators. It's interesting to me that notwithstanding this persiflage about what the Vice President thinks of you in the Republican Party, when the chips are down, some of the most distinguished Republicans of our time stand up and say, Charlie Goodell's a great senator, we want him in the United States Senate. And it takes a senator to know a senator. That's what you've got on your literature, and that's right. You not only quote me, for which I'm flattered, but George Aiken, who's our senior, and who certainly represents Vermont and is no wild-eyed radical lib or anything else, says the same thing. Senator Percy is here to say it in person. Senator Griffin, the deputy minority leader, who's generally considered at the moderate conservative, certainly a conservative in his views, says the same thing. So does Scott, the minority leader of the Senate, and many others. Some 20-odd wished you well when you got off in this campaign. Now why? Why you? I think you've put your finger on it, Charlie. And this answers what you answered tonight. You know, the whole world was abuzz about the fact that you might tonight throw your support to your opponent in order to see that Buckley didn't become senator from this state. It would be absolutely unbelievable if a man who stands for the views, the ultra-conservative views of Barry Goldwater, and he said so himself, I heard him on television today, Jim Buckley, who you know ran against me and was decisively defeated, as he should be now, said today that his model in the Senate was John Williams. Now, John Williams of Delaware is a fine senator, very conservative man, doesn't vote at all like any New Yorker. I don't think 5% of the people of this state would vote like Jim. We value him, but he comes from a state that represents that point of view, with the essential impact upon economy. But in civil rights and housing and education, in the foreign policy of America, wonderful man that he is. He'll tell you so himself. He's as different from New York as day and night. But that's Jim Buckley's model. So I'm glad you're staying in the race, Charlie. It was a very moving speech, and you have the courage of a lion that you're staying in it against any odds. And I think you're the target. Your defeat will demonstrate that there's no room for any kind of moderation or understanding or enlightenment. Think those who are trying to defeat you in this party. That is not true. And the place that's got to prove it is New York. And I'll stand with you. And I think Rockefeller will stand with you. And every other right-thinking New Yorker will stand with you to refute this and to elect you. You're the target, not your opponent. You. To elect you precisely to disprove what you're being made the object lesson for in this state.
Senator Javits and my colleague Charlie Goodell, I was deeply moved also by your presentation this evening. And yes, I've come across the country, and I've been probably in 11 states for Republican candidates in this campaign. In the last few weeks, I would say the eyes of the nation have turned on New York. Your name has become a household word in many families in many areas of this country. And my own deep interest in you, as you know, went back to the keen insight that you had years ago when, as a congressman, you hired a young intern to work as a research worker in your office, and that happened to be my daughter. And she's a very good judge of men. And she reported to me at the time the creativity, the excitement in your office, the number of ideas, the deep concern you had for your district and for your country and your love of country. That was her first experience in American politics, and it was a wonderful start for her. I'm here really today to represent 23 of our colleagues, Republican senators in the United States Senate, all of whom, part of whom will be here tomorrow to campaign for you, but all of whom have sent messages of goodwill and support. They have seen, as I have, a stand-up senator, a creative man, a man who knows his job, who knows his state, and who dedicates himself to finding pragmatic solutions to problems. You can put all the labels you want on, but this 23 senators, the group of them, ranges from liberal to moderate to conservative, whatever it may be. They all testify to the great work that you have done in the United States Senate. I've been privileged to sit alongside you for 2 years now in the Housing and Urban Affairs Subcommittee of the Senate. I have seen your tenacity in fighting for the things that you believed were wrong in society. Whether it was rodents in society or abandoned buildings in New York, you created the framework for legislation that has gone before the entire Senate now. And it's legislation that has benefited every city in America that has these same problems. Your insight into mass transportation made possible the most magnificent piece of legislation on mass transportation. In fact, just this year alone, I totaled up that 44 bills have passed the United States Senate that you either sponsored or co-sponsored. So that on behalf of my colleagues who want you back in the Senate, I am honored to be here in New York to support Governor Rockefeller's re-election, to support your re-election and the Republican ticket. I campaigned for all Republican candidates that have asked me to, and I was honored to be asked to be here as my colleague and friend with you this evening.
Charlie, thank you for letting us have a word, and I've said it many times, if everybody that wants to vote for you, votes for you, you'll be elected, news poll or not.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Chuck. And ladies and gentlemen of the listening audience, I thank you for your patience, and I apologize for preempting Lassie. I apologize to my 5 boys who are here too, but I understand that we will find out next week about Lassie's puppies anyway.